to you. Welcome to the 23rd season of Newsmaker Live right here on DBS Television. My name is Timothy Pooley. I'll be together until 10 o'clock this evening, at which time we'll be concluding with the clip that peaked. I have a special guest this evening. He is the leader of the parliamentary opposition, also the MP for Castries East, Mr. Philip J. Before that, you've heard the news that I'm no longer with Radio Caribbean International as of last Friday. Don't expect me to make any prolonged statements on this particular matter, primarily because I'm somewhat subdued. Because anything can happen within the next few weeks and months. So I have to weigh my options and not make any deliberate statements on this particular issue. But I'm looking forward to being on a radio station by lunchtime Monday of next week. I am currently in negotiation with several radio stations, and the negotiations should conclude before the weekend. So I should be back on a radio station hosting a lunchtime program on Monday of next week. So please stay tuned. Happy New Year to you, sir.
Hi, Timothy. Happy New Year.
And welcome to the program.
Well, it's good to be here. I want to say good night to your listeners. You may recall we had that discussion from last year when you said to me sometime in December that you'd like me to be the first guest. I'm pleased that I was able to accept it, and I thank you for inviting me.
What are you looking forward to from 2019?
In 2019, I'm looking forward to our party being able to discuss with the people of St. Lucia the policies we have for the country when we get into government. We want to talk to our people about what we're going to do as far as the economy is concerned, what we're going to do as far as employment is concerned, what we're going to do as far as the governance of the country. We're very concerned about the governance of the country. We want to speak to our people about a new economy, an economy that is based on entrepreneurship, but not entrepreneurship for the mighty, entrepreneurship for the ordinary man and woman. We're going to speak about cooperatives. We're going to speak about new business models that will take the country to the next level. We believe that there's too much emphasis on old models. We think there is room for new models, we think that there is room for new things, and we think there is room for more inclusion. There is room for our people getting closer together. We only have a small country. It can't be right that every 5 years, 40% of the people get ostracized. That cannot be right. We have to find new ways of putting that together. It's not going to be easy, but we've got to find new ways, and I think I have the experience, I think I have the knowledge, I think I have the will to make that happen. So that's what we're looking for in 2019.
What is preventing you from introducing those new models to the people of St. Lucia whilst you were part of the government of the St. Lucia Labour Party? Because you've been a part of the parliament from 1997.
Well, I think what I'd like to speak about is being the head of the government, being the prime minister. I think I would like to be judged as being the prime minister, not being judged as being part of a government.
And not being,
it's like having a business.
Not
it's
being
like having
the
a
deputy
business.
prime minister.
No, I like to be judged to be the prime minister. It's not like, it's like having a business. I mean, if you have a business, the person, like, okay, I'll give you an example. In football, when the team goes wrong, the coach gets the blame, right? You saw it happen to Manchester last week. I want to be judged, not on what people think I will be. I want to be judged on my plans for the future of this country and my performance when I was in government. That's what I want to be judged by, my plans. How Philip J. Pierre, can you trust him? Has he been honest? Has he, in government, has he been involved in anything that has been closely linked to anything that is corrupt? I think that's how I want to be judged. And allow me the opportunity. I think it's very unfair to judge me as to what you think I will do. I think I should be judged when I get to be Prime Minister of St. Lucia.
Well, I was not making reference to you in your capacity as having served as Prime Minister, because you've never served that.
I've never served.
And I could only make reference to your performance as a senior government minister and also your performance as Deputy Prime Minister of St. Lucia. So it's not basis, don't you think, that people will be able to make some kind of clear-cut decision as to whether you should be Prime Minister of St. Lucia?
Okay, sure. I just want to be brief. Let's talk about the Ministry of Tourism. The largest number of tourism investment has come under my tenure. I created a philosophical underpinning for tourism. The benefits of tourism must accrue to as many people as possible. That came under my tenure. I reorganized the taxi service. I caused incentives to be given to taxi drivers, all for the very reason that I said, because of the philosophical approach that I had taken on tourism, I sought that the ordinary man or woman must benefit. Hence the reason why we had incentives for taxi drivers. We trained them and give them incentives. I introduced the rangers, the rangers and the hostesses program, where again we employed people to get in touch with tourists, to guide them along the way, etc. I reorganized the marketing of St. Lucia in North America. I reorganized the marketing of St. Lucia in that we broke down the marketing in terms of individual people and not in an office. So the people who sourced for St. Lucia were not in the office, they were out of the office, and they did work in different parts of the US. That was under me. I got involved in terms of commerce when I was Minister of Tourism. I had the first manufacturing and export strategy in the country. I reorganized the St. Lucia Bureau of Standards. I was instrumental in the forming of the Manufacturers Association. I changed the way in which we charge the consumption taxes, in that people pay the consumption taxes ex-factory and not on the final product. So, and if you go in the Ministry of Infrastructure, I oversee the build of 21 bridges. So my performance as a minister can be tested. I did not do everything I wanted to do, but I did quite a bit in transforming both the tourism industry and infrastructure and commerce in the country, not forgetting my own constituency.
Tell us what you did not do.
What I did not do, in terms of, I would have liked, in terms of when I was Minister of Commerce, I would have liked, although we did quite some work, I'd have liked to pay more emphasis on small business. And what I missed, and it wasn't in my ministry, but as I said today at the press conference, I want to improve the cooperative sector. I want to expand the cooperative sector. I want to make that sector an integral part of the development of St. Lucia, the cooperative sector.
But your good friend, Mr. Kingsley St. Hilaire, has been speaking about the cooperative sector over several decades.
Yes.
That means that you're not listening, or you did not see the necessity to pay particular attention to some of the issues that were being highlighted in terms of the benefits of improving the state of the cooperative sector.
What I see, I'll tell you something, Timothy. Things come in their seasons. Let's look at 1997. In 1997, the economy was in transition. The economy is coming from a banana-based economy to a services-based economy. There was a great dislocation in that you found thousands of people were leaving the banana economy and having to go in tourism. So the government at the time, we had to transform that economy from being agri-based to tourism-based, from agri to services. So that took much of the attention of the government at the time. During the other era, we came from one of the world's greatest depressions, 2008. Well, it was that depression again in 2011. We had to deal with a fiscal deficit of 9%. The fiscal deficit of St. Lucia in 2011 was higher than Barbados. And that is why I always speak about fiscal deficits. What saved us in St. Lucia? In that we did not print money like Barbados, and our national debt was not as high as Barbados. That's what saved us. So I really agree with you. We could have paid more attention to cooperatives. I will be the first person to tell you that. Although we expanded the ministry, but we should have paid more attention.
What about protecting the rights of consumers? That is still in abeyance.
Again, I forgot that. The Consumer Protection Act started under me. I was the one who started.
Yeah, but not
who
completed.
started. No, it wasn't.
It's not a case of starting. Why,
No,
why
it-
not complete? Because you
It
have
has been
sufficient
passed
time.
now. The bill has been passed. The government of the day must deal with it. The Consumer Protection Bill has been passed.
No,
It spanned over
but
three
realistically,
administrations. But
the SLP came
government-
into office in 1997, between 1997 and 2011, it would have been 2000,
1997
1997
to
it was
2006.
2006 it was
Yes.
in office.
Yes.
And it's saying that this particular legislation could not have been sufficiently gone through its various stages to ensure that consumer rights were protected in St. Lucia,
No, I'll
because
tell you what.
this has been a dominant issue.
I'll tell you what.
And the SLP returned to office in 2011.
I'll tell you something about the process toward consumer rights. You may recall that it was under my tenure as minister, we revised the Hire Purchase Act. The Hire Purchase Act was one of the stages in getting in the comprehensive consumer protection bill. The Hire Purchase Act put some level of control over hire purchase companies. You may recall that these companies could have come to take your furniture at 6 in the night on Friday night. That was in the act. You may remember that they never told you what interest rate you paid. That was in the act. We are the ones. The my tenants means of commerce. We changed that. So we were into consumer protection. But the consumer protection bill had to be a bill that was not singular as far as St. Lucia was concerned. It had to be a bill that had to have broad consensus because it deals with the whole business setup in the islands. So we wanted to wait to have what we had was a regional bill to be maintained across the board. And that's what took the time.
What prevented the government from ensuring that we went through the entire process? Yes, you said that it warranted the cooperation of the other territories.
Yes, and the private sector.
And the private sector.
That's very important. Private sector, yeah.
So, why did it linger?
Because
specifically, why did it linger?
Because it was a sensitive act, and you must understand what it dealt with was business people, and business people it's a far-reaching act, and we did not want to be accused of being anti-business.
So you can understand what this government is going through right now as far as this legislation is concerned?
I understand.
Okay. The other point about business.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that big business would be influencing governments too much? Whether it's a government of the United Workers' Party or the St. Lucia Party? Because I think that's what inadvertently you just told me.
Yes. Big business definitely has influence. I'll give you an example. The Labour Code is one of the most progressive pieces of legislation ever passed. And many people can tell you that the Labour Party lost the election because of the Labour Code in 2006. You may recall that one particular business laid off or fired hundreds of workers just on the eve of the elections in protest of that code. So the influence of big business, and what has made it worse, is the influence of money politics. That has given big business a grip on governmental affairs, money politics, the politics of money. And as a party, I think that both parties, all the political players, should come to compromise as far as money is concerned in politics. And it's a serious situation. I'll tell you something. Look at the idea of incentives. The government just passed a law in cabinet that says cabinet can give whatever incentives it deems fit. Now listen to me. I'm casting no aspersions. No aspersions. Cabinet can pass whatever incentives. So even if you have a set of incentives that have been given, the cabinet can pass it. You know the influence that can cause on cabinet ministers? Then you have the power to give any incentives that you want.
But cabinet before that had the right to grant incentives.
Based on the law.
But grant incentives.
Based on the law.
Yes. But cabinet would decide would meet.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, if a government minister, for whatever reason, does not like a particular individual, they can determine whether that person gets the incentive or not.
Yes.
So what has changed? Basically nothing?
No.
What has changed is that the government now has the right to determine what level of incentive to grant to business people.
What has changed is when you have a cabinet that seems to always go in one direction. That's what has changed. You must understand.
But all cabinets have done it.
No, they don't.
All cabinets have done it.
Cabinet has the basis. I'll tell you something.
Should this be removed, therefore? Should this responsibility be removed across the board from cabinet?
What happened is there's a tourism. I don't think you understood what I was saying to you. There's a Tourism Incentives Act that gives the level of incentives that a business can get. That has been passed by the Parliament. We have a unique situation in St. Lucia in that we have no backbench. Every minister is a cabinet member. So what's happening, you find? So when he goes to cabinet, he says what he has to say. Parliament says every minister is a cabinet minister. Now, the Tourism Incentives Act was passed by Parliament. So the entire Parliament knows what is passed. It's debated. Even though the eyes have it, but it's debated. And that's the beauty of debate. The public has the time to listen to both sides, even though the eyes always have it. But what's happened? What they've done is they've said they can go against that and give whatever incentives that they want. And that's what's dangerous, you know. We're not speaking about the Tourism Incentives Act or the tourism or any other act for incentives. They can go beyond that.
Yeah, but there's always been abuse when cabinet has to decide who gets concessions.
Yes, but the abuse could be is based on individual preferences. But there is a law. There's an overarching framework. That's the law. But right now they've said they can go beyond that, and that's what's important. And not come to the Parliament. Do it in cabinet, and where the entire cabinet is in Parliament.
You talk about earlier on about new models.
New models.
Do you think that's something that should be looked at?
Yes.
Where a separate body should be granting incentives?
I think there should be an incentive law, and people who apply within within that law, within the parameters of the law, and incentives are given.
Do you think that, politicians having access to the resources of the state, there's just too much abuse on the part of governments?
I agree.
Because in the final analysis, when a government decides to talk about, not having sufficient finances to address issues that are impacting the people, whether it's in crime, whether it's healthcare and so on, it's the people that are directly being impacted. Yeah. But then the governments now, they use the resources of the state in a very irresponsible manner. And remember, I'm saying governments.
I'm
hearing you.
I'm hearing you.
Or the United Workers' Party.
No,
how can this be curtailed? How can this be addressed
I'll tell you
satisfactorily?
There's something called evidence-based, right? Now, listen to the evidence. The evidence is, in the last 2.5 years, the government has borrowed $1.5 billion. That's not disputable. That is not, now we're not going into the reasons why they did it. We're talking about the fact that $1.5 billion has been borrowed by this government in the last 2.5 years.
Why aren't you interested in the reason for the borrowing?
We're coming to that right now. Here's the reason for the borrowing. You borrow $270 million to build an airport. Right? That you haven't determined the cost of that airport. You haven't have any plans for the airport. The airport plans have not been made public. If they've been made public, I apologize. We do not know. It's like you, Timothy, when you build your house, you go to the bank to borrow money before you have the plan for the house. That hasn't been done. You have a situation where all airports that have been built have under all sorts of scrutiny, under all sorts of allegations of corruption, under all sorts of procurement problems, all these kind of problems. But then the excuse that we use for that is that we have an airport departure tax. Not remembering that the airport development tax, not remembering that same airport development tax was in play when the United Workers' Party were in government. And a bank denied them the financing. The same business model. The same model of borrowing on the airport development tax. It abandoned. The bank said, no, I'm going to deny you that money. Here's the difference. Here's what you do. You say to yourself, you come away from that borrowing. You give the airport, you allow the private sector with certain guidelines, with certain requirements to handle that entire process. Here's what you've done. You've cleared your fiscal space of at least $270 million, at least. You've taken all the risk away from your government, away from your people. You share in the returns, and you've taken all the cloud of suspicion, all the procurement policies, all the procurement problems, all the problems that relate to corruption, allegations of corruption, all the interference, you've taken it out. You put it in the hand of the private sector. A private sector that is used to doing that. We're not talking about a private sector that's been used to doing that. The private sector has been used to building airports all over the world, but you have oversight on it. You've cleared your fiscal space. I want to tell you, why on earth would a government borrow $270 million and wanting to borrow more? Because the airport will cost more than $100 million US. It must cost more than $100 million. Why would a government do that? And when that whole process could be looked over by an international body, the same body that you've gone to borrow money for health care, the same body you're going to borrow money to build your roads and your bridges, the same body that you've gone to borrow money for all kinds of programs. That body is saying to you, let me overlook that process for you. You say no and you're borrowing money? Don't you think evidence-based, based on the evidence, that decision is not right?
But you talk about corruption, but isn't it the previous St. Lucia Labour Party administration which enacted an Integrity in Public Life Act?
Yes.
Yeah. Why hasn't it been given the teeth, the necessary strength to ensure that the regulations that come together with that Integrity in Public Life Act would be implemented in the case that somebody has been found guilty of corruption?
And I've made it clear, Timothy, and again, I want you to hold me to, listeners to hold me to task for that. I'm on record as saying that when the Labour Party gets into government, we're going to strengthen the integrity
in Public Life Act.
Act.
What prevented, again, you see, because politicians in the office, they turn a blind eye to a lot of things that are happening. And somehow when they get out of office, they have an epiphany, a sudden realization that there's need to address this particular issue. If you have the foresight to have implemented an Integrity in Public Life Act, introduce it. I think it's just only recently that Barbados decided to do that. Why didn't the same government have the foresight to give it the legal legs to go ahead and prosecute people if they're found guilty?
You see, I'll tell you something further. Laws, these kind of laws, assume men of integrity. And that's why people tell you why many laws are passed in the country and there are no sanctions. They assume men of integrity. They assume it. But you're right. You must not assume. Although the act has teeth, You know, the act has teeth, but it takes the courage.
The teeth not sharp.
It takes courage. It takes courage. And let me give an example on the Integrity Commission Act. Let me take an example. The Constitution says that the Prime Minister must write the leader of the opposition. Consult him. The Prime Minister wrote me a letter on that. I wrote him back and said to him, and I won't mention the names, that there are two members of the act of the board I don't agree, I don't think they should be there based on my knowledge. He never even responded. He never, and you see, now, you think any law could assume that the Prime Minister will behave in that fashion? Any Prime Minister? He did not even respond and say to me, why do you think these two members should not be there? Let's have a discussion. He never told me that. Now, again, you tell me, why didn't we give the law teeth? You think the law can ever presuppose that kind of behavior?
The law also does not anticipate that cronies will be part of
the Integrity Commission.
No, the Public Service Commission. The Public Service Commission. And that's what happens, whether it's the SLP or the Lucas Party that's in office.
I don't know. No. Evidence-based.
It is well known in the Public Service Commission. Yes. It is well known that, diehard supporters of the SLP are part of the PSC.
To say it for evidence.
And when it comes to the United Workers' Party, they would also want to have their supporters
I would like you to have it evidence-based. I don't want to go into names this tonight. You have to look at the members name by name. You see, people say these things without having the evidence. We have to go to them name by name. I'm not mentioning anybody's name tonight. There are members of the Public Service Commission who were active campaigners against me. They do it up to now. They go house to house. They involve in the constituency groups.
It happens. It happens
No,
both
it
ways.
doesn't.
No, it happens. It happens. With the Public Service
You wanna call
Commission,
names?
you have supporters who are there
I'm
now
not talking about
who campaign
supporters.
against the previous
No,
administration.
I'm talking about functionaries. But let's not go
No,
into
but
that,
Mr. Pierre,
because
I
we're
mean,
going
the
to call
SLP
names.
is not coming with this particular argument with clean hands, as far as this issue is concerned. It's
What-
not coming with clean
What
hands.
I'm saying to you is that I like to do it based on evidence. But the fact is, let us look to begin a new era.
So, for example, when the
Yes.
SLP would accuse the government of victimizing
Yes.
its supporters, St. Lucia Labour Party, governments have not victimized supporters of the United Workers' Party. They're going to
Have you
categorically tell me no? That's not happened?
Have you ever heard any SLP minister go on the parliament of the country, evidence-based, and proclaim that if it's now you're crying, you just start to cry? Have you ever heard any SLP minister do that? Have you ever heard any SLP minister say that he made a mistake because he thought it was 75% of the nice workers who were supporters of the Labour Party, but he's made a mistake. It's 90% of them who are supporters of the Labour Party, and let's use a word that they like to use, they lost their contracts, were not renewed. Have you ever heard any SLP minister say that?
It's not a case of saying.
No, but
I'm asking you again. It's not a question of saying.
No, evidence.
I'm asking you, has there been any case where St. Lucia Labour Party administrations have victimized people they believe to be supporters of the United Workers' Party? It's a simple question.
I'm not dealing, and if we did that, it was wrong. And two wrongs do not make a right.
I'm putting to you that it has happened.
If it
has
happened, it was wrong. And what we say is that two
And
wrongs-
will it stop?
And the people of St. Lucia,
Will it stop if the St. Lucia Labour Party returns to office?
when the St. Lucia Labour Party gets into office, the St. Lucia Labour Party will, as far as possible, try to stop the animosity, the division, the bitterness, and the vindictiveness in the society. Our party,
That's been contributed by both political parties.
our party will not subscribe to that kind of behavior. Our party will never say, Philip JP as Prime Minister will never say to opponents, let the jackasses breathe, even though it's figuratively or not. We'll never say, I don't listen to barking dogs. I will never say that. Because you see,
you never refer to MPs on the other side as poodles neither? You will not do that. You will not do that.
No, I will not do that either.
Okay.
But referring again is how it, I'll tell you something. A poodle is actually a pet. And that wasn't an original.
Mr. Pierre,
that was not original.
Don't justify.
Anyhow, let's
don't
go.
justify.
But
because I think
the
up until
point
that time
I'm
you're
making-
doing well. Just
the
don't
point-
justify.
The point
There's no justification
The point
for
I'm
this.
making to you is two wrongs never make a right. And we have to try to make it right. And the people of St. Lucia voted to make it right. The people of St. Lucia voted the Labour Party out of office, because they did not agree with what we were doing. We accepted it. I called Alan Chasney and I congratulated him. I said, you've won, congratulations. So we're not going back into the past. The Labour Party has paid for its misdeeds or its missteps. We've paid for it by losing an election 11 seats to 6. What you're looking for now is the betterment. And we're saying that this party that I lead will do the betterment for St. Lucia in our next term.
Do you think there's a natural folly on the part of opposition parties that whenever they get into office, they seek revenge? Do you think that naturally happens?
Revenge?
Instinctively, it happens?
It's not political party. Revenge is a man-made thing. It's man-made. They have different. I mean, this thing is based in political philosophy. There's Hobbes, there's Hegel, there's Machiavellian. The guy who said that the state must be used. I think it was Hobbes who said so. That the state, either Hobbes or Hegel, my memory doesn't serve me right, that the state must be used as an instrument to control men. Another one says that man is basically brutish and he must be controlled. Another one says that man is good and the state must be used to bring that together. Then there's Machiavellian that says by whatever means necessary. So all these things have their roots in political philosophy. It has their roots in political thought. But where it distinguishes itself is the quality of leader. The quality of leader. The leader must have the moral underpinning, the political morality to do what is right for the benefit of the people of the country. That is where a leader must lead. A leader cannot be led. A leader must lead. A leader must seek consensus. A leader must seek to be inclusive. And a leader must give and take, and he must not be petty. Any petty leader, any leader who believes that anybody who says something against them is an enemy will not be good for the country.
And we have had those leaders on both sides.
That's up to you to judge.
I'm just asking you.
It's up to you.
Do you think we've had it on the side of the SFP
It's
as well?
up to you to judge.
When we continue the conversation in just a moment on the first Newsmaker Live program for 2019, we'll be focusing on the motion of confidence. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. You're watching Newsmaker Live, the 23rd season of the broadcast and the first one for 2019. My guest this evening is the MP for Castries East. He's also the leader of the parliamentary opposition, Mr. Philip J. Pierre. We conclude at 10 o'clock this evening with the clip that peaked. 9:30, we'll be taking your calls. The motion of no confidence filed against Prime Minister Alan Chastanet was brought before the House on the 29th of January. Why did you take such a risk?
It wasn't a risk. It wasn't a risk at all. You may recall that people are the ones who said that we intended to get the Prime Minister fired. We never said so. You've never heard any member of the leadership of the Labour Party say that we think the vote of no confidence to get the Prime Minister
So
fired.
what was the motive?
The motive, the objective was met. We wanted a forum where we could say the solutions. And I've made a point several times, Timothy. I want to make it tonight. This motion was not a personal motion. We were not involved in personal situations. Too much in St. Lucia's because
But I didn't think it was personal when you said that the motion is against
the
Prime Minister
for the
against
policies, for his
against
policies.
Prime Minister Alan Chastanet.
For the policies.
Why not the government
No,
for its policies?
because the Prime Minister is the head of the government, and the Prime Minister
so
is
if you decapitate him,
is on equal,
then
is on equal,
the government will collapse.
I didn't say so. All
I'm
I
just
said
asking.
is he's the head of the government, and he's equal among equals. You understand? Now, people are making a big fuss about the motion being unconstitutional, etc. Now, let me tell you evidence. And again, fact, not opinion, fact. Standing order number 21. Any member may propose by way of motion any matter for debate in the Parliament. Any member may propose by motion any matter for debate in the Parliament. So the Parliament can decide that we're debating whether there must be stray dogs on the streets, and the Speaker must accept it. The Parliament can decide whether there's a motion to debate whether parliamentarians should come to the Parliament office bareback. And it must be debated. That is the power of the Parliament. Number one. Except a money bill, which is under Section 48 of the Constitution, where it says there's a way in which money bills must come to the Parliament. The only mention of a no confidence motion, and I may be wrong, is in Section 69, 9B, where it says that if there's a no confidence motion in the government, then the government must resign within 3 days. So it doesn't say that there must be a no confidence motion in the government. It says if there's no confidence, it gives the consequences of a no confidence motion. That's all.
Whose idea was it to file this motion? Was it
the idea,
one particular individual?
The idea of the St. Lucia Labour Party.
No, but
you must imagine.
Someone must have proposed
you,
it.
You must determine, no, we take our decisions by consensus.
So, in unison, speaking with one voice,
you may recall
MPs or supporters of the St. Lucia Labour Party decided that let us file a motion of no confidence. It didn't take no one individual.
It took the consensus from the party. Our party works like that. Ideas come to our party is a party of democracy. A party where people debate, where people discuss things, etc. It's not a one-man situation. What happened is that the party took a decision based on the evidence that we thought that Adam Shastney should be replaced as Prime Minister because, to our mind, the decisions he had taken that were inimical to the development of St. Lucia, and we did it the democratic way, we brought it to the Parliament. And all the time, I always ask his ministers to vote by their conscience. Now, I want you to go further. Again, some people want to give the opinion as if that never happened before. Let me tell you where it happened before. It happened in Barbados in October 3rd, and I have it here, in October 22nd in 2013. It was filed by Mia Mottley, the now Prime Minister, against the Minister of Finance, Chris Sickler. The motion was heard on the same day. In St. Lucia, it took almost 3 months. In Trinidad, on 8th of May 2013, it was filed by Keith Rowley against Pamela Basassa and her government. It was heard in 12 days. In the Cayman Islands, it was filed by Alden McLaughlin against the Premier, Makiva Bush, 24 December. It was heard in 5 days. In Grenada, it was filed by Keith Mitchell against Prime Minister Tillman Thomas. It was heard in 18 days. At Trinidad again, February 2012, it was filed by Dr. Keith Rowley, the former now Prime Minister, against the Prime Minister Kamala Persad. It was heard in 16 days. In 2010, it was filed by Portia Simpson, the former Prime Minister, against Prime Minister Bruce Golding. Portia Simpson was a minister, was a leader of the opposition. It was heard in 14 days. In Trinidad again, in 2012, it was filed by Kamala Persad against Prime Minister Patrick Manning. In Barbados, in February, 27 February in 2009, it was filed by Mia Mottley, the now Prime Minister, against David Thompson. 26th of August, it was filed by Ramesh Maharaj against Prime Minister Patrick Manning. And in Jamaica, in 2006, it was filed by Bruce Golding against Prime Minister Portia Simpson. So filing motions against Prime Ministers is nothing new. That's happened throughout the region, but it happened that we were not on that side of history and we did it. So it's nothing new.
In your tenure as a government minister, part of the cabinet of Prime Minister Dr. Kenny Anthony, you never reached the conclusion that it was necessary to file a motion of no confidence against Dr. Kenny Anthony?
That wasn't that was not our responsibility. It was the opposition at the time.
Forget responsibility, because it seems it seems a fait accompli. Based on what he enumerated there, that opposition parties see it as their role to file motions of no confidence against the government or prime ministers.
Yes.
It's never the other way around, where people look inward and determine as a cabinet that we have a prime minister who is failing the people for one reason or the other, and therefore we should file a motion of no confidence against that individual.
Then there's no need to do that. If you're in government, all you do is 9 of you go up and go to government and change the government. The prime minister. There's no need for that.
You can determine, yes, but I'm just saying, why not similarly file a motion of no confidence against the prime minister?
Because it's not necessary. Because if you want to get rid of the prime minister, the simple thing to do, and that is why there was so much horse trading, and that's why there was so much fear.
But what you'll be doing in this particular case, you want to give the opposition an opportunity to vote either in support of the prime minister or not.
No,
it seems predictable. Something that is very predictable, that government MPs will always side with the prime minister, will never oppose their prime minister, and opposition will always oppose the government.
Wrong.
That's the evidence.
No, prime ministers have been removed. That's a vote of no confidence.
That's what I'm referring to specifically.
Removing prime ministers doesn't only go by votes of no confidence.
We understand
exactly.
We understand.
In Bermuda,
we understand
the prime minister removed by a majority. I did something. In that scenario,
I'm just saying, the question I did pose to you, if you would never realize that there was the need.
No, I never
realized there was the need to do that.
No, I never thought
there were no instances where
I never
it was
thought
necessary.
it was a need. No, I never thought it was a need.
Rochamel,
I never thought
Breinberg,
Rochamel,
never.
Rochamel was taken to a commission of inquiry. Rochamel was taken to court. If the government of and I've said,
but
I have made that point many times before, Timothy.
The government did not.
I made
Government
it-
ministers did not make a
I
decision
made it-
to look inward to
I
challenge
made
the
it
prime
in
minister
the
on the
parliament.
issue.
I made the parliament. I have said to this government openly, if anybody in our party did anything wrong, take them to justice. If you have evidence, take it to justice.
And what do you
I've
expect will
said
happen?
so. I've said so. Then
On
the
the
court,
basis of the
then the
evidence.
courts will
No,
decide.
On the basis of the evidence.
But it's no use you running
No,
something.
Mr.
Do
Pierre.
something about it.
On the basis
Yes.
of the evidence,
Uh-huh.
because you keep saying the evidence,
Yes.
over the last few years since independence, what has happened? Any politician, whether in government or in opposition, has ever gone to prison for misdeeds, for corruption?
Well, that's
Has
wrong.
it ever happened?
That's wrong.
Do you think it should have happened at
No.
some point?
I have given the government the option now. I've said do it.
But we know nothing will happen.
Well, that's their business. So stop talking about it.
But
I have said.
But
you
governments
talk
do
about-
it. Governments
No,
do
but
it.
Timothy,
Because what governments
you're
do,
talking about-
what politicians do is to name and shame each other.
And I'm telling.
Hoping in the final analysis that they'll pay a price in the ballot box. But whether you have an integrity of in public life act and so on, it's just a game. It's just a ruse. It's just putting the system in place to say that I have put this system in place. It's a stratagem. Put the system in place, and it does not work
Timothy,
to the detriment of the people.
I will not look into crystal ball. I'll tell you what Philip JPL does, Prime Minister. I won't tell you what has happened before, what should have happened, because I was never Prime Minister. And that is a very important point to note. You can only speculate on my behavior as Prime Minister. All the surrogates and the naysayers can only speculate on my behavior. They cannot say with any verifiable fact how I'll behave when I'm Prime Minister of the country.
But don't you think government ministers
And
should
I'm
hold their
saying-
prime ministers?
And I'm saying to them, all I'm asking is to give me an opportunity to prove what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. That's all
But
I'm
shouldn't
asking.
you ensure, as a government minister, that your prime minister acts in a responsible manner? Shouldn't you ensure that this happens?
Yes.
Because it appears
Yes.
that government ministers turn a blind eye to whatever wrongs that are committed by prime ministers.
I might say yes. Okay, yes. So let's take it.
So if you if you are guilty of this, let's just imagine you're guilty of this,
guilty of what?
turning a blind eye to the wrongdoings of whether minor or major
You see-
or whatever as of prime ministers, don't you think that therefore people should hold you responsible
You see-
for the wrongdoings of previous prime ministers?
You see,
and we're talking in general terms.
Timothy,
Mhm.
I really want to speak about the future, to speak about what's happening, what's happening wrong now in the economy of the country, how we could have changed it, and want to the
But
future.
Mr. Pierre, you want to
I
be prime minister is
have
based on the
been-
basis of your track record that people should judge you. Don't
Yes,
you think so?
Yes,
On the basis of your
not
track
on the
record.
basis of my
Your
track record working under the prime minister. The basis of my track record being prime minister. If you have any questions on any other prime minister, you must ask them. I served in a cabinet. I believe that at the time, and I know at the time, the government of St. Lucia, or the Labour Party, did many positive things for the people of the country. Many. I was saying that, I was speaking to some people on the weekend. Do you know it was the Labour Party who passed a law that said trade unions, once you have 50 plus 1%, must be recognized? It was the Labour Party. Do you know it was the Labour Party that revised the criminal code? You understand? To make some crimes, especially sexual crimes, to make them legal, to make sexual crimes, to make them not legal, to have laws against them. Do you know? I mean, the Labour Party I was a part of, the Labour Party that enshrined equal pay for men and women, the Labour Party I was a part of did a lot of good things. Do you know it was that same party?
You agree it also did a lot of bad things?
We made some mistakes.
Yeah.
Of course, we made some mistakes. We were not perfect. You know, it was that party that stopped the shift system, not only for primary school children, but for secondary school children, for secondary and primary. Timothy, you remember we were brought up on the same road. You remember that before, just after our time, children went to school for half day. It was a shift system. It was a Labour Party. So we mustn't look at the Labour Party. I'm proud of the achievements of the Labour Party when I was in government. I'm proud of it. I will agree with you that the Labour Party made mistakes, like all governments, like all people. If we could do some things differently. I'll tell you the first thing. But I'm not proud. I will not go back and hide in a corner and say the Labour Party did nothing. The Labour Party transformed the economy of this country. It's all modern legislation was put together by the party. Our party built 2 stadiums, one of which now is being used as a hospital. Our Labour Party transformed the entire north of the country, apart from Rodney Bay, which was done by John Compton. That whole Boss issue development was done by our party. That whole Kareli development was done by our party. We transformed the country. We did a lot of things. So I don't want to, I'm not going to tell you, I'm going to hide saying that, oh, the Labour Party made some mistakes, but I'm proud of the achievements of the party when I was in government.
Several days ago, I did pose that question to you, so I'll take the opportunity yet again. Because having served as a senior government minister in the previous St. Lucia Labour Party administration under Dr. Kenny Anthony, and you now wanting to be the Prime Minister of St. Lucia on your own terms, what would differentiate you from the stewardship of Dr. Kenny Anthony?
I've told you several times, Timothy, I'll tell you again. When you want to discuss Dr. Anthony, ask him. Dr. Anthony is a man, a grown man, an educated man, a man that I served under as Prime Minister, and I'm proud of it. I'm proud, and I thank Dr. Anthony for allowing me 15 years of service as a minister and for 5 years as being his deputy. I will not be ungrateful. I thank him for it.
It is not big.
I thank him for it. But I'm saying to you,
because you're giving me the impression that I'm seeking some kind of negative response from you. That is not my motive. I'm merely asking the question. The difference between Philip J. Pierre and Dr. Kenny Anthony. Your background obviously is different in many ways. So how will you govern St. Lucia? Totally different from how Dr. Kenny Anthony presided over the affairs of St. Lucia. That's basically what I'm asking.
And I'm telling you that I want to be judged not as Kenny Anthony's deputy. And I'm telling you also that I was proud to be his deputy. But moving forward, I think that we are living in a different time, a different age. Things have been done differently. Let me give you an example. When Dr. Anthony was Prime Minister of St. Lucia.
Only recently, yeah?
In 1997, from 1997. No. He was there in 1997.
No, but listen,
1997, yes.
Listen, we don't have to go back to almost 20,
over
20 years ago.
You want to look at the last 6 years?
I'm just saying,
okay,
Dr. Anthony was as Prime Minister of St. Lucia as recent.
Okay,
as recent as 2016.
You want to
that's not too far away.
Do you want to look at these years? Let's go look at these years. You want to look at the years 2011, 2016?
I'm just saying.
No, but do you want to look at
these
years?
1997.
No, okay, all right.
Right?
Okay. All right. I'm not going
that's
there.
a total. If you tell me that's a different era, but there's not much daylight between 2016 and 2019.
You want to go there? Let's go there. 2011, a deficit of 9.9%. 2011. 2011, a situation where you inherited a deficit, you inherited a national debt that was in the 80s. You had to manage that economy. You had to manage it. How did you manage it? You had to implement some measures that were uncomfortable. You see, how did we measure? How, and we can take it and go straight to 2016 and see the difference. Right, so that's what we had in 2011. We had to manage that deficit. 2011, we had a situation where you had negotiations with civil servants going on. You had a situation where the whole crime situation in the country changed. It was bad in 20. That's why we had to have Operation Restore Confidence. The whole crime situation in the country changed. You had a situation where borrowing was a lot more difficult. So you had to balance an economy. At the same time, you had to have capital investment. You had to repair schools. You had a crumbling infrastructure, but you had a high debt to GDP ratio. Fast forward, this government in 2016 got a deficit of 3.4% and got a current account surplus. It also got a rebased national debt, which reduced the national debt by about 7 percentage points. So the very situation in the economy, and they also got VAT already implemented. So much so they promised to remove it altogether because they understood the political will it took and the political fallout from VAT. They promised to remove it, to eliminate VAT completely. It's complete removal. That was part of the fight to stay alive. Because they understood that part of the reason why Dr. Anthony lost the elections, because the VAT was imposed. So it's completely two completely different situations. But I want to tell you, Tim, that I believe that our party, in the circumstances, did what was best for the country. I'll also admit that we did make some mistakes. We are all human. What I want to do for you now is to move forward, to share with you my dreams for New St. Lucia, to share with you my desires for St. Lucia with Philip JP as Prime Minister. That's what I want to share with you. I want to share with you my plans for inclusion, my plans for accountability, my plans for stopping this yardforism between two warring factions. That's what I want to spend. I want to discuss with you new legislation. I want to discuss with you what I deem as the youth economy. That's what I want to discuss with you. I don't want to go back into Kenny Anthony. Kenny Anthony did what he had to do as Prime Minister of St. Lucia, and I'm very proud of what he did. But I don't want to go back there. I want to deal with current. I want to deal with why Alan Chastanet as Prime Minister of St. Lucia, what he should be doing and what he should not be doing. I don't. It's the same way we don't go into Stephenson King as Prime Minister. Have you ever heard anybody mention Stephenson King as Prime Minister of St. Lucia? And he's in the government.
People are making reference to Mr. King, yes, of late.
In the government?
Of late.
Of late.
Asking the opposition. The opposition is saying now, Mr. King would be a better Prime Minister than Mr.
The opposition never said so.
No, Mr. When I was employed, when I was employed with RCI after 28 years, just recently, Dr. Ernest Hilaire was my guest.
Yes.
And he offered Mr. Stephenson King as an alternative to Mr. Alan Chastanet. He even offered Mr. Estefan as an alternative to Mr. Chastanet. So why all the love now for Mr. King?
It's not because in Ernest and Dr. Hilaire's, in Dr. Hilaire's mind and by his own belief and by his own conviction, he thought that Stephenson King and Estefan were better Prime Minister than
But when he was Prime Minister, you guys had little to no respect
for Mr.
Stephenson
What
King.
He's saying is in the present circumstances, Ernest believe that. That's his opinion. A lot of people say, have negative opinion about me. Ernest believe that. So how can you vex Ernest for believing that?
No, I'm not vexed. I'm just saying it appears convenient now to say that Mr. King would be a better Prime Minister than Mr. Alan Chastanet. When Mr. King was Prime Minister, he was given a hard time.
Because Ernest
even disrespected to the point of reference being made that he was not educated. Because didn't have a degree.
Because Ernest believes that is better than Alan Chastanet. That's Ernest's opinion. He may be right.
But do you think people have a difficulty in basically reconciling this with, when politicians out of convenience take positions that they believe will sit well with their base? Then Mr. King was not a good Prime Minister. It sits well with the SLP base. Now he would be a good Prime Minister and would be better than Mr. Alan Chastanet. It sits well with the SLP base.
What Ernest was saying is that based on the performance of Alan Chastanet, that King would have been better. That's what Ernest was saying.
And based on the performance of Mr. Alan Chastanet right now, Philip JP would be a better Prime Minister. It's on that basis.
That's what Ernest said also.
I'm asking you.
That's what Ernest said also.
No, I'm asking you.
For me, I believe, yes, I can do a better job.
But you have never served in that position.
I said, I believe I can do a better job.
Okay. Just on the basis of your belief.
My belief and based on the basis of my plans and my aspirations for the people of St. Lucia.
How difficult do you think a sell will this be to the people of St. Lucia?
I don't know if it's difficult. I don't know what you mean by difficult. I mean, I'll tell you something. Of what
I could use the word easy.
Of what
Think
people,
it'll be easy?
Of what people become.
Do you think it'll be easy?
Of what people become Prime Minister of St. Lucia, I've been the most readied of all of them.
So again, you were ready now, then you were
Readied.
ready then,
Yes.
Dr. Anthony, even then.
Even then,
And,
readied.
And then
And Alan Chasley, and Vaughan
then
Lewis,
Dr. Vaughan
and
Lewis.
John Compton, and George Charlton, I've been the most readied.
Because of what? Your years in politics?
Because my experience, my ministerial experience, based on ministerial experience, I've been the most ready. That's what I said. Based on ministerial experience. I'm doing nothing else. I'm saying nothing else. I'm just about ministerial experience. I've been the most ready.
But you could be in a job for an extended
No.
period.
I'm not
have
going
the
there.
experience.
You asked me a
and
question,
then-
I answered.
And then you're
I
not ready
said-
for the job.
No.
You're not ready for
I said
for
I've
elevation.
been the most readied. That's what I said.
Then all those individuals.
All of them before me. I've been most ready.
You didn't mention Sir John.
I've been most ready than him. I have 15 years. He didn't have 15 years when he gave me. I've been the most ready. In terms of ministerial experience, you can check it out.
Okay. But just ministerial experience, nothing else.
Ministerial experience. I'm not sure. It may also be experience as a parliamentary representative. It may be. I must check it. I didn't.
But
you-
is
I
but
saw
is that
it.
enough? But is that
Huh?
enough? Is that enough?
Yes, that is
A start.
That's a major start because you see, I tell you, when if I become prime minister, I have nothing to prove. I don't want to prove anything. Becoming prime minister for me is just another step in my evolution in politics. It's another step to continue my contribution to the people of St. Lucia. I haven't got to prove anything. I don't have to prove power. I've had power. I don't want to prove that I am better than anybody else because I've had the occasion to prove that. The people of Cashews East have proven that.
But you've never been prime minister.
I've never been prime minister.
So against
So-
that background, you're really eager to prove
When I'm saying that
that
yes,
you can be prime minister.
because I believe and have the confidence and the support of my party that I can be a good prime minister.
You think come the next general election, which is due in 2021, that you'll have the hierarchy of the St. Lucia Labour Party supporting you as political leader to realize your dream?
I cannot speak about the future. I can speak about what has happened in terms of what I can tell you is that the last convention of the party, I got 270 votes against 3. At the one before, I got 268 against 11. And the one before, I was unopposed. That's the evidence I have in front of me.
Finally, before we take a break, and then we'll be entertaining calls from our viewers and listeners, it's being suggested that Dr. Ernest Hilaire is just waiting on the wings to take over the mantle of leadership of the St. Lucia Labour Party from you. You've heard this, haven't you?
I'm listening to you.
Have you heard this?
I'm listening to you.
I'm just asking. Have you heard this?
Of course,
because I've heard it.
Like a lot of my other things.
How much credence can we give to that?
Dr. Ernest Hilaire has been one of my most hardworking, one of my most cooperative, and one of my most supportive members of parliament and members of my party. Dr. Ernest Hilaire, like many other people, has a right to want to aspire to be Prime Minister of St. Lucia. That's his absolute right. And if he didn't, something would have been wrong with him. There are other people in the party who have the same aspirations. And that's what our party is all about. But I know, as I speak now, I have the support of all the members of my party, except 3 who voted against me at the last convention. And I'm confident that we will work as a team to win the elections whenever it's called, and I'll be the Prime Minister.
You're watching Newsmaker Live right here on DBS Television. My guest this evening, once again, the MP for Castres East, who is also the leader of the parliamentary opposition, Philip JP. I'm going to come back your calls, and we conclude at 10 o'clock with a clip that peaked. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. You're watching Newsmaker Live right here on DBS Television. We'll put the telephone number on screen so that you can call with your questions and comments for my guest. He is Mr. Philip J. Pierre, the MP for Castries East and also the leader of the parliamentary opposition. So you can call right now with your questions and comments for my guest. You've been in politics for a very long time, an MP from 1997. Have you made a determination as to when you will bow out of politics? After what, 22 years now as MP?
That depends on the people of Castries East. I think that the people of Castries East have shown, and I really want to thank them for showing that confidence in me.
Okay, we have a call. Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Good night, Tim. How are you?
I'm okay, sir.
Good night to your guest, Mr. Pierre. Tim, I'm sitting here watching your program tonight, and I think that I feel like I'm in a dream, listening to some of the statements made by Mr. Pierre. And one of the things that he said in his basket trying to collect water was that just last week, one of the things he said in the House, almost a week to the day, a week and one day, was that the government MPs should vote their conscience and side with the opposition in calling for or in voting in favor of the resolution of no confidence in the motion of no confidence in Prime Minister Alan Chastney. However, if Mr. Pierre were to ask the government MPs to do such, where was his compunction at the time, or where was his motivation when he was in government to vote his conscience in opposing or not agreeing to a number of the egregious affairs which occurred under the St. Lucia Labour Party, where he was Deputy Prime Minister? For example, Grindberg, Jufali, and a host of others, including Rochamel. And regardless of whether they, for example, Rochamel, as he said earlier, went to the courts, nothing has been taken to the courts with Alan Chastney, but he wants the members of the government to vote their conscience. And one other point as well, and I'll hang up for the response. At the beginning of the show, Mr. Pierre spoke about the Integrity Commission. And one of the things that strikes me seriously that he should have said something about, it's been in the public domain, it was a response by Dr. Kenny Anthony with regards to public officials, of him receiving a vehicle from constituents. And that certainly flies in the face of the regulations and the conditions under which public figures would serve with regard to the Integrity Commission. I would like to hear what Mr. Pierre has to say with that. I know there are other callers, so I won't go into anything else. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for calling. Go ahead, sir.
I don't think what the caller who is actually a paid functionary.
And by the way, that was Mr. Norbert
Yes.
Williams, Administrative Attaché to the Prime Minister.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I can see in anything. I don't think that really deserves an answer. I've made a point about Grindberg and Rochamel several times before. I have said, and I'll say it again, Grindberg and Rochamel are in the public domain. It has been discussed over and over. If anybody did anything wrong, take them to the courts and let justice prevail. And that's all I'm going to say on that. Secondly, about Dr. Anthony's vehicle, that has been ventilated over and over again. Again, the government is in power. If they find things are wrong, they have a right to do whatever they have to do to make it right.
We have a call. Thanks for holding on. Good evening. Okay, we lost that call. Please call in and we'll be entertaining your contribution. Okay, we have that call already. Good evening. Newsmaker Live, you're on the air. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hi, good evening to you, caller. You're on the air.
Good night.
Hi, good evening.
I do not believe Mr. Philip J. Pierre is supposed to entertain this gentleman talking this kind of nonsense on the show. When it comes to Grindberg and these things have been in the public domain for so long. There is things that we need to deal with at the present moment. Right? If he doesn't have anything to say, he should stay away from public telephone and call the shows. What I want to ask Mr. Philip Pierre is to tell St. Lucians what he believes that he can do for the country, what he believes is best for the country with the situations we are in now, right? Because a lot of things, the questions that have been asked about what Kenny does and what Philip does and stuff like that, to me, that ain't making no sense. So, Timothy, you as a news journalist, right? You want yourself to be compared with another journalist? Do you want that?
It happens from time to time.
But I'm asking you, do you want it to happen? Where you go on a show,
No, but
and somebody telling you they want to compare you with Andrew Paul.
But I don't have a choice. It will happen from time to time. And we're talking about two different issues. You're talking about...
We're talking about professionals.
Hold on.
Mr. Philip Pierre is involved in politics.
Yeah,
You are
and people can ask those questions. People can ask those questions because what
No,
people...
I'm asking you, do you
I'm
believe
answering
that's
you.
the right thing to...
It's not about right or wrong. The people have a right to ask the question. There's nothing like a foolish question. There's a foolish response.
No, I'm not saying it's foolish. I'm asking you, do you believe it's the best question to be asked of
There
you?
is nothing wrong, sir, in asking the question. It's how you respond. People will deduce many things out of it. Okay?
Okay, but you're asking the question to compare, you know.
But there's nothing wrong.
You're asking you're asking comparison. Okay, let me ask you a question. I just want Mr. Pierre to tell St. Lucians what he's going to do with what's happening in the country presently, with what what Alan is doing to the country, right? With all the borrowing, right, the crime situation, and what he believes is best for the country, what he wants to do for the country. That's what I want Mr. Pierre to tell us.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks a lot. I can imagine that people will be asking Mr. George Mallet if he, deceased George Mallet, wanted to replace or succeed Sir John Compton as Prime Minister. What differentiates the two? I mean, you've been there for so long. What's different about you versus Sir John Compton? Anyway, let's take a call. Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Yeah, good evening, Timothy.
Hi.
Good evening to your guest, Mr. Pierre.
Good evening to you, caller.
Yeah, Timothy, I've been listening to the show, and I was taken aback because, you know, with that Rochamel affair and that Grindberg affair, I mean, when will it stop? There are so many things happening in this country. Alan Shastney is about giving away half of Beaufort. Okay? Alan Shastney has just, he said he's the Minister of Job Creation. What happened to the fisheries compass? Are we discussing that? Our hospital, we have a hospital that is under construction or construction has been finished for over 10 years. We have brand new equipment in that hospital that is already beginning to become obsolete because of the age of the equipment, and it's brand new. Shouldn't that what we should be discussing?
Caller, I'll put it to you that I pose different questions to Mr. Pierre, and I've opened the lines. It's your responsibility now to focus on the issues that you deem to be important, as opposed to taking me to task for asking those questions.
No, I'm not taking you to task.
No, I'm just saying to you, you should take the opportunity to focus on those issues that you yourself want to highlight.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, before I ask Mr. Pierre the question, I'm speaking to St. Lucians. When will we wake up? When will we see what is happening to our country? We have a government that have given Sanders, and correct me if I'm wrong, 24 to 25, thereabout, $1 million of our money. Give it. Just give it to him. When our hospitals are not open. We have a government that have given a foreign company $18 million, Auto Lab. We speak about Grindbergs and all of that. These are the issues we should be discussing.
All right.
Listen.
Yeah, go ahead quickly, because we have to take some more calls.
Okay. Yeah, you don't
Go ahead. No, go ahead, caller.
These are the issues. Anyway, Mr. Pierre, I'm asking you. There is a lot of injustice is being done to this country. If given a chance to be the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, what would you do to have Sandals give the people of St. Lucia back their money? I want to know what you will do for the opening of our hospital, both in Dufort and Catchy.
Okay, thank you so much. Go ahead. Mr. P.
Yeah.
Our call.
You want to answer?
Yeah, let's call.
Okay.
Let's
Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Yes, good evening, Timothy, and good evening to your guest, Mr.
Hi.
Philip J. Pierre.
Good evening to you, caller.
Yes, Timothy, I watched your show from beginning to end tonight. And I have to say, Philip J. Pierre, he's my parliamentary rep. And he is a man that I've had the highest, in fact, as a politician, I have had the highest level of respect and regard for him as a politician. And because of his performance in your interview tonight, I must say my regard for him has been multiplied perhaps more than 10 times. Because to me, his humility, his professionalism, his ability to keep his emotions in check. In fact, I would say that after all these years and experience in politics, for Philip J. Pierre, that was definitely not in vain, because he really behaved like a true statesman tonight and convinced me that he has what it takes to represent St. Lucia at the highest level, and especially even more so if he is given the opportunity to lead at the time when that opportunity comes. So, Mr. Philip J. Pierre, thank you very much. It was really impressive just watching you with Timothy Polia tonight. My hat is tilted to you. Thank you and good night.
Thank you so much for calling, ma'am.
Thank you, caller. Thank you very much, caller. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. The last caller.
Okay, we have another call. Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Good night, Timothy.
Hi, good evening to you, caller.
Okay, I'm watching your program and I just want to... Yeah, and I believe if he when he becomes the next president.
Okay, please, caller, please turn on...
And Mr. Pierre?
Caller, can you turn on the volume of your television set, please? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Pierre. Go ahead.
The caller spoke about the $80 million to Ojo Labs. Now, Timothy, my issue with the $80 million to Ojo Labs, or the money given to Ojo Labs, I don't know how much it was, is a matter of accounting. Mm-hmm. What should happen, Timothy, is these funds are taxpayers' funds.
Good evening, Newsmaker Live.
Hi, good evening, team, and good evening, Honorable Pierre.
Good evening to you, sir.
Let me just thank Honorable Pierre for standing up, for all of us in the House of Parliament and placing this motion of no confidence in Alan Chastanet, because, and I don't have to rehash, the faults in Alan Chastanet, the healthcare, the duration of our healthcare, the jobs that we say we have, Ojo Labs, but we paying for them for no returns on our investment in that, the closure of Christopher Square, and what have you. But let me just pose a question to Mr. Pierre and hope that he can answer it tonight. The faults that I see in Alan, like, who do you, when you become Prime Minister, have private meetings at Sandals with owners of hotels, have cabinet meetings at Sandals, have, special trips on planes where people can influence you to twist that arm of yours to make decisions that are against the people of St. Lucia. Because at this present moment, this is what's happening. Although we see this beautiful thing, all those extravagant presentations by the Prime Minister, the people on the ground are suffering. So I want to know, when you do become Prime Minister, what will you do in your powers to prevent yourself to be swayed by those types of people who will allow the poor people to just remain poor and dependent on a Prime Minister in this country? I thank you, Mr. Pierre.
Thank you. Vice Chairman of the Opposition SLP. Go ahead.
Caller, thanks for your support in what I said tonight. There's something called perception in politics. Now, perception is half a reality.
Yeah, go ahead.
Half a reality. Mm-hmm. When you live in a small country, perception, optics, how it looks to the eye is very important. And I must tell you, some of the things the government doing doesn't look good to the eye it doesn't go. The optics are not good, you understand? Many things in the optics are not good. The Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, she just passed a decree and said no minister must go into any negotiations with any private investor without a civil servant. She also said that all government emails must go on the government server. You see, so these things, so the government must be more conscious of optics.
Hold that point. We have a caller. Thanks for holding on. Good evening, Newsmaker Live. You're on the air. Okay, let's that call. Go ahead, please.
Yes. Now, we'll talk about Ojo Labs. Government...
My apologies. And this will happen quite often because we have so many calls. Good evening, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Tim.
Hi, good evening to you, caller.
How are you?
I am doing well, very well.
Hello?
Yes, caller.
Tim?
Yes,
good
sir.
Evening.
Yeah, good evening to you.
No, I think you can hear my TV, can you?
I suspect you should turn it off.
Give me a second.
Okay.
So
do that quickly.
Yeah. So you see, so the optics have been bad, some of them. Now the whole Ojo Labs thing, my issue with Ojo Labs is very simple.
Has it gone now?
Accountability.
Yeah, I think it's better. My apologies, Mr. King.
No, it hasn't gone yet.
Yeah.
It hasn't gone yet.
Hello, caller, you ready?
Accountability.
Yeah.
It's gone now.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Your guest is speaking through his bid to be the Prime Minister of the country, which is his right, as is every other person's right. But the thing is, he is behaving as if he has no history in politics. He has forgotten that he has been involved in politics for 22 years or thereabouts.
A little more than 22.
And he has to be judged by what has happened over those 22 years. Now, he may escape being judged for much of what happened for those 22 years because he was not the leader for all this time. He's only been into that position for a very short time. But one cannot ignore the fact that the Labour Party won the elections in 1997 by a margin of 16-1. And such was their performance that 10 years later, they were kicked out of office. 10 years, 16-1, sorry, 10 years later, completely kicked out of office. He speaks about victimization. The first few years of the Labour Party was outright victimization under the name called, I think, affirmative action. Right? And this continued for a very, very, very long time. And we go down all the road, and some people have mentioned all the various egregious acts that was committed by the then Prime Minister. And it's as if all that has to be brushed under the carpet. And he can ride above all that, untainted by all of this. They were kicked out in 2011, whenever it was. And the former Prime Minister came back and he pled a mea culpa. And he begged for forgiveness. 5 years later, again, he was kicked out. And now, having wrecked the country, literally wrecked the country, he is asking us to say, no, give me a chance to show you what I can do. You've had 22 years to show what you can do. And in all those 22 years, you may say what you have done for your party, but I doubt very much if you can say what you have done for the country. And this is the important thing. He's forgetting his history, and he has not said what he will do for the country, what he can do. And in fact, 22 years is a long time to be in a learning position. It's way, way too long. So it is beyond me how someone can, after 22 years in politics, can offer himself as if he has a clean slate and present himself for prime ministership now. Alan Shastri,
can you allow Mr. Pierre to respond?
Yeah, just one quick one.
I'll let the caller to
continue.
Okay. Caller, please,
Alan Shastri
you're going
is
on
being
good track.
excoriated for a whole variety of things. But my own opinion in all of this is that we are where we are now because of what the Labour Party has done for those last 22 years. They have put us there. They were given the 16-1 mandate. They were put there. And so if anybody can speak ill of Alan Shastri, it has to be the Labour Party. They created him. And they should not be the ones to remove him after they have created him. They have shown no ability to be able to step into the shoes and do what the country needs to be done. It is dishonest of the Labour Party now to step up to the plate and say, after all this time, move me, I will do better. It borders on the ridiculous.
Thank you so much for calling, sir. Mr. Pierre.
Yeah, but I mean, what the caller did is just rehash a lot of the same thing that they say all the time, 22 years, 20 years, etc. I mean, I spoke to you, we spoke about the achievements of the government. The caller is being blatantly biased and unfair and not speaking the truth if he says that the Labour Party did nothing for 22 years. I mean, this can't be true. I spoke of one simple case, the deficit. The deficit was 9.9% in 2011. It's 3.4% in 2016. And how can a government, the caller says we wrecked the country. How can a government that wrecked the country, a new government came into power in 2011, they have not fired one civil servant. In fact, they've increased it. They have not had to go to the IMF. In fact, they've stayed away from it. They have got the scope to borrow $1.5 billion. But this caller is saying they wrecked the country. Look at what happened to governments that changed in the region. Look at Barbados. I hate to use a regional country as an example. In the change of government, thousands of civil servants were sent home. Look at Grenada. The change of government, they had to go to a homebred structural adjustment process. In terms of Jamaica, etc., any government that has changed, the new government has had to take drastic measures to deal with the economy. What did our government do? Our government got scope to employ more people. Our government got scope to borrow. Our government got scope to do many things because the base was there, the national debt was at a reduced level, and the fiscal was under control. So what this scholar is saying is absolute political jargon and has no basis in economic facts.
Let's take a final call. Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Thank you so much for holding on. Go ahead,
Good
please.
evening.
Good evening to you,
Good
caller.
evening, Mr. Pear.
Hello, good evening.
Mr. Pear.
Yes.
You are one of the, I think you're very humble on the opposition side. And Timothy asked you a few questions, and there was one of them that you evaded a little bit. I'll tell you something. You said when the Labour Party lost the election, you called the Prime Minister and you complimented him. And I know you did it because that's the type of person you are.
Yes, we had a discussion. In fact, I met the Prime Minister.
At the time, the leader of the opposition never called or did anything like that. So it tells you that there are two totally different persons there. And right now, the problems that we are going through with red and yellow, it did not stem from now, and it stems from the depth of some of the leaders who are not humble like you. Now, a question I'm going to ask you, or should I say a few questions. One of them is this. If you are the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, what different would you do in the case of the fisheries department that's going through a problem right now, in the case of the Hiranora Airport, in the case of where there is supposed to be the dredging of the is it not the reservoir,
the dam.
In the case of the new road that they want to build in a different direction coming from, I think, Grosile. In the case of getting investors into St. Lucia, getting work for the young people. I think that's a lot for you. So please, I'm listening to you. And do have a good night, Mr. Pear.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for calling. You will not be interrupted, sir. Go ahead.
You want me to deal for them?
If you care to.
Sure.
If you care to.
Caller, first of all, in the fisheries, I as Prime Minister, my first action would not be to send 50 people at home. What I would look for is a new business model. And I said so in my press conference today. I would see if I could deal with the fisheries complex in terms of a cooperative, where I would call the workers and say, listen, let us work together with the fishermen, with the fishermen corporate, with the fishermen, and let us see if we can have a cooperative to run the fisheries complex. But my first mode of behavior would not have been to send the workers at home. In terms of the HIA, my position is clear. I would have gone with a public-private partnership arrangement. That's what I believe in. I think that would be the best for the country. In the case of the Roseau Dam, I would continue the procurement processes, and I will continue the processes, albeit they took some time, that were in process using the Caribbean Development Bank. I would have continued that. In terms of the new road you speak about, the government had decided that new road came from a grant from the British government that was negotiated when Kenny Anthony was Prime Minister. What we would have done is we would have continued with that opening of the North-South Ring Road, and we would have used the OPIC funds, which I had negotiated, which were available to redo the Millennium Highway. And in terms of investors, we would have offered investors a credible alternative, but we would also look at different types of investors. We would look internally. We look to see if we could mobilize local capital, if we could use local financing. We would see if we could have new business models for the development of the country. That is briefly what I would do in terms of these 5 areas that you mentioned.
Final comments from you, sir?
Okay, I want to thank you. I want to wish you the best.
Welcome, sir. Thank you.
I want to wish you the best. I want to tell you, I enjoy that show. I think I want to come back to talk to you about the future, about my vision, about my plans, about how I see St. Lucia evolving. I want to discuss with you St. Lucia in the year 2030 and beyond. I want to tell you my hopes and aspirations, what I hope to aspire, how I hope to lead St. Lucia into a new era.
Thank you so much, sir, for being my guest on this evening's Newsmaker Live. And to you, thank you so much for watching the broadcast and contributing via your calls. And I'd like to tell you that I'm looking forward to being on a radio near you come Monday of next week. We have been sharing our time together, lunchtime together, and I'm looking forward to regaining my lunchtime perch on a radio station come Monday. So please stay tuned. I'll be communicating with you via social media. If it's Wednesday, it's Newsmaker Live. Time now for the clip that peaked. Once again, that's the broadcast. My name is Timothy Paulion saying good night. See you next time.